I thought I knew what "above the law" meant until the day Margery Pinkerton showed up in my driveway with her neon yellow vest and clipboard, ready to issue parking tickets to my guests like she was judge, jury, and executioner. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's Quinn Caldwell, and after 15 years serving in the Army Corps of Engineers, I thought I'd seen every type of territorial dispute imaginable. I'd been stationed in countries where land disputes led to actual gunfire. Yet somehow, none of that prepared me for the suburban warfare that awaited me when I purchased my dream home just outside the Whispering Pines subdivision. The key words there being, outside the subdivision. It was my daughter's 16th birthday, and we had planned the perfect celebration. Fiona, my brilliant, headstrong daughter who somehow survived having me as a single dad while I was deployed, deserved nothing less than epic for making it to 16 with straight A's and a wisdom beyond her years. I'd invited her friends, my friends, some neighbors, and a few of my army buddies who were in town. About 25 cars lined my circular driveway and the edges of my property, all neatly arranged to ensure emergency vehicles could pass if needed. I was at the grill, flipping burgers and enjoying the sound of teenagers laughing by the pool, when I noticed a squat figure in a yellow vest marching up my driveway, slipping papers under windshield wipers. "Excuse me," I called out, spatula still in hand. "Can I help you?" The woman straightened her back, revealing a name badge, Margery Pinkerton, Whispering Pines HOA Security. Her lips were pressed into such a thin line they practically disappeared into her face. "You're in violation of Whispering Pines HOA regulations, Section 7, Paragraph 12, no more than 3 guest vehicles permitted without prior authorization," she declared, waving her clipboard like it was the Constitution itself. I set down my spatula and wiped my hands on my "Kiss the Cook" apron, a gag gift from Fiona. "Ma'am, I appreciate your diligence, but I don't live in Whispering Pines. This property isn't part of your HOA." Margery's eyes narrowed. "Don't be ridiculous. All properties in this area are part of Whispering Pines. Not mine. I specifically bought this place because it isn't HOA controlled. I checked the property lines and deed restrictions before signing. There's no HOA covenant attached to this land." "Impossible," she snapped, continuing to place tickets on windshields. "You'll need to pay $50 per unauthorized vehicle. That's..." She did some quick math, looking at the cars, over $1,000 in fines. My army buddies had started to notice the commotion, and Mike, a 6 feet 4 inches former staff sergeant with arms like tree trunks, wandered over with a concerned expression. "Everything okay, Quinn?" he asked, eyeing Margery. "Just a misunderstanding about property lines," I explained calmly. "This lady believes my property falls under Whispering Pines jurisdiction." Margery huffed. "I've been HOA enforcement for 7 years. I know exactly where our boundaries are." I excused myself, asking Mike to watch the grill, and headed inside to grab my property documents. When I returned with a folder of papers, Margery was arguing with my neighbor, Dave, whose truck had also received a ticket. "Look," I said, opening the folder on the hood of my SUV. "Here's my deed, property survey, and the explicit statement that this parcel is not subject to any homeowners association covenants or restrictions. You can see the property line here." I traced my finger along the map, "runs along the stone wall at the end of my driveway, which is a good 50 feet from where Whispering Pines begins." Margery barely glanced at the documents. "Those must be outdated. The board expanded our jurisdiction last month." That caught my attention. "Ma'am, HOAs can't just expand their jurisdiction onto private property that was never part of their development. That's not how property law works." The board voted. It was unanimous. She said this as if it settled everything, continuing to ticket cars. By now, several party guests had gathered, including my daughter Fiona, who was watching with the mixture of embarrassment and fascination that only teenagers can perfect. "Dad," she called. "What's going on?" "Nothing to worry about, honey. Just a mix-up." I turned back to Margery. I'm going to have to ask you to leave my property and take those tickets with you. Refusing to comply will result in additional fines and possible legal action, she responded, scribbling something else on her clipboard. I felt my military training kick in, not the combat parts, but the parts about keeping cool under pressure and dealing with bureaucracy. I pulled out my phone. Since you won't accept my documentation, I'm calling the police to report trespassing. That got her attention. The police, she scoffed. They'll side with the HOA. We have an understanding with local law enforcement. Nevertheless, I dialed the non-emergency number, explained the situation, and was told an officer would be dispatched. Meanwhile, Margery continued her ticketing crusade, now adding interference with HOA business to her list of my alleged violations. My daughter sidled up next to me. Dad, this is actually way better than the magician you hired, she whispered, making me laugh despite the tension. 20 minutes later, Officer Rodriguez arrived. He looked from me to Margery and sighed in a way that suggested this wasn't his first HOA-related call. What seems to be the problem? He asked. I explained my situation, showing him my property documents. Margery interrupted frequently, insisting that the HOA had expanded its territory and that I was in violation of multiple regulations. Officer Rodriguez examined my paperwork carefully. Ma'am, Mr. Caldwell is correct. This property is not part of Whispering Pines. HOAs can't unilaterally annex adjacent properties without owner consent and proper legal filings. But the board voted. Margery protested. The board can vote all they want on their own property, Rodriguez explained with remarkable patience. They can't vote to take control of someone else's property. That's not how property law works. We've been enforcing regulations on this property for months, she countered. This was news to me. What? I've only lived here for 8 weeks. Margery faltered. Well, we've been monitoring the property. The previous owners knew they needed to comply with our standards. Officer Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. The previous owners were the Johnsons, correct? He asked me. I nodded. The same Johnsons who sued your HOA 3 years ago for harassment and won, he asked Margery. Her face flushed. That was a misunderstanding. Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez continued, I need to ask you to remove all tickets from these vehicles and leave the property immediately. You are currently trespassing. I most certainly am not. I am performing my official duties, which have no authority here, he finished for her. This is private property outside your jurisdiction. If you don't leave now, Mr. Caldwell would be within his rights to press charges. Margery's face turned an alarming shade of red. She looked like she might spontaneously combust on my driveway. Instead, she tucked her clipboard under her arm. You'll be hearing from our attorneys, she threatened, storming toward the entrance. Looking forward to it, I called after her. Please take the tickets with you. You can consider those official notifications of violation, she shouted back. Officer Rodriguez shook his head. I'll help gather them up after I file my report. He turned to me. You might want to set up cameras. In my experience, people like this don't give up easily. He was right. Over the next week, I received daily violation notices in my mailbox for everything from unapproved landscape design to unauthorized fence height. I installed security cameras as suggested and caught Margery and another HOA board member measuring my grass with a ruler at 6:30 one morning. The situation escalated when I found an official-looking document taped to my door claiming that my property had been incorporated by proximity into the Whispering Pines HOA and that I owed $2,750 in back dues, fines, and administrative processing fees. I took the document to my friend Carla, who happens to be a real estate attorney. This is complete garbage, she said after reading it. None of these legal terms make sense. Incorporated by proximity isn't a real legal concept. This looks like they just made up legal-sounding language. Armed with Carla's advice, I drafted a cease and desist letter, had her review it, and send it certified mail to the HOA board. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I came home from work to find a landscaping crew in my yard, ripping out the native plant garden I'd spent weekends installing with Fiona as our father-daughter project. I slammed on my brakes and jumped out of my truck. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The crew foreman looked confused. "We were hired by Whispering Pines HOA to bring this property into compliance. We have work orders right here." I called the police again while blocking the crew from doing any more damage. This time, 2 officers arrived, including Rodriguez. "Not these folks again," he muttered, seeing the Whispering Pines logo on the work order. While the officers were documenting the trespassing and destruction of property, a silver Mercedes pulled up. Out stepped a woman in her 50s, dressed like she was heading to a country club luncheon. She introduced herself as Elaine Whitfield, president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding," she said smoothly. "Mr. Caldwell's property falls within our aesthetic influence zone, and we're simply helping maintain neighborhood standards." "Aesthetic influence zone isn't a legal designation, ma'am," Officer Rodriguez replied. "You've authorized work on private property without the owner's consent. That's criminal trespassing and property damage." Elaine's smile didn't waver. "Our attorneys have assured us that our incorporation vote was perfectly legal. Mr. Caldwell's property benefits from proximity to our prestigious community, and therefore must maintain our standards." I'd had enough. "Your prestigious community has no authority here. You've now trespassed multiple times, attempted to extort money through fake fines, and damaged my property. I want to press charges." The officers took statements from everyone involved, including the landscaping crew who showed text messages from Margery instructing them to remove all unapproved plantings, and bill me for the work. Elaine's composure finally cracked. "This is absurd. We are maintaining property values for everyone. You should be thanking us." "I'll send my thanks in the form of a lawsuit," I replied. As the officers were explaining to Elaine that she would need to appear in court to answer for the trespassing and property damage charges, Margery Pinkerton herself arrived, clipboard in hand. "What's going on here?" she demanded. "Why are these officers interfering with HOA business again?" Officer Rodriguez turned to her. "Ms. Pinkerton, we meet again. I believe we discussed that this property is not under your jurisdiction." "We voted," she insisted, waving a document. "I have the board resolution right here declaring all properties within half a mile of Whispering Pines subject to our covenants." Rodriguez took the paper and read it. "Ma'am, this isn't how property law works. You can't vote to control someone else's property." "Our attorney says, your attorney is giving you bad advice," he interrupted. "And based on the evidence we've gathered today, you're being charged with criminal trespassing, destruction of property, and attempted fraud." Margery's face went from red to white in an instant. Fraud? I'm just doing my job. Creating fake legal documents to extort money is fraud, the second officer explained. And we have copies of the notices you've been leaving. What followed was one of the more satisfying moments of my life, watching Margery Pinkerton and Elaine Whitfield receive citations and court summonses right there on my torn-up lawn. As they left, Elaine rolled down her Mercedes window. "This isn't over, Caldwell. We protect our community." "From what?" I asked. "Native plants and birthday parties." The aftermath was both tedious and gratifying. I filed an official complaint with the county about the HOA's practices and discovered I wasn't their only target. Several other homeowners outside their boundaries had received similar fake notices and intimidation. The district attorney took a special interest in the case when they discovered that Whispering Pines HOA had been collecting fraudulent fines from at least 7 properties outside their jurisdiction for years, totaling over $40,000. Apparently, this had been Margery's special project, though the entire board had known about and encouraged it. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Margery, Elaine, and 3 other board members accept a plea deal for criminal fraud and harassment. They were sentenced to community service, ordered to pay restitution to all affected homeowners, and prohibited from serving on any HOA board in the future. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, seemed particularly irritated by the case. Homeowners associations serve a legitimate purpose when operated properly and within their legal boundaries, she told them during sentencing. What you have done is use the guise of community standards to engage in territorial expansion and financial exploitation. As for my yard, the landscaping company, which had genuinely believed they were doing authorized work, offered to restore my native plant garden at no cost. My daughter and I spent several weekends replanting together, making it even better than before. The silver lining to the whole ordeal was connecting with my neighbors, both within and outside Whispering Pines. Many residents of the HOA had been similarly bullied but feared retaliation if they spoke up. With the old board removed, they elected new leadership focused on actual community building rather than measuring grass with rulers. Dave, my next-door neighbor, organized a block party to celebrate. To freedom from tyranny, he toasted, raising his beer bottle toward my house. Fiona, who had watched the whole saga unfold, surprised me with a custom sign for my birthday, "Sovereign Territory, no HOAs, no exceptions," which now hangs proudly by my mailbox. "You know," she said as we installed it, "I think I want to study law now. Seeing how those HOA people just made up rules and tried to enforce them made me realize how important it is to understand your rights." I couldn't have been prouder. Sometimes the best lessons come from the most unexpected battles. The following spring, I expanded my native plant garden and added a small sign identifying it as a certified wildlife habitat. Occasionally, I still see cars from Whispering Pines driving slowly past my property, but they never stop anymore. My army buddies find the whole saga hilarious. Mike sent me a camouflage doormat that reads, "Trespassers will be composted for the native plant garden." The best part, though, was the letter I received from the county planning department 6 months after the court case. They were implementing new regulations requiring HOAs to clearly mark their boundaries and provide accurate maps to all residents and adjacent property owners. They were also establishing a formal complaint process for HOA overreach. They called it the Caldwell provision. Sometimes standing your ground really does make a difference, not just for yourself, but for everyone else who might face the same battle. As for Margery Pinkerton and her clipboard, I hear she's moved to a high-rise condo downtown. No yard to measure. No fences to inspect. No territorial disputes to wage. And my property? It's still gloriously, defiantly non-HOA. Just the way I like it.